Well, up and at 'em, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us here on the Talk of the Commonwealth. Time for us to check in with the Better Business Bureau of Central New England. Megan McBride is here, as always, this morning. Megan, good morning.
Good morning, Hank. Thanks for having me, as always.
Yeah.
And today we have a lovely, amazing, another accredited business. We have Patrick, and I'm so sorry, Patrick. I'm going to try to pronounce your last name.
Sounds like Cochran to me.
Cochran, yep.
Yeah.
Cochran.
Little Scottish there. Absolutely.
Well,
Absolutely.
Irish, yep.
I should be ashamed then because I'm Megan McBride. I'm also very Scottish and Irish, so totally my bad. But from Red Dogs Roofing, which I imagine we need a lot of roofing people in this world today because roofs need a fixin'.
That they do. I mean, one of the things that I think, and I'll start off, Patrick, just by having you kind of give us an overview. But one of the things I'm thinking of just from what Megan just said about the roofs they need a fixing is you come out of the winter and people have had those ice dams, or here we are in the summer, and it seems as if we don't get rain anymore. We just get these torrential downpours that come beating down on your roof. So I don't know how much leakage we have, but give us a little bit of an overview of Red Dogs Roofing and where that name came from.
Yeah, so good morning, everybody. Again, my name is Patrick Cochran, founder and owner of Red Dogs Roofing. So Red Dogs Roofing, the name kind of came from my grandfather's nickname was Red. My dad said he worked like a dog, so I combined them together, and that's where I came up with the name.
I love that.
Yeah, so we focus on roofing and exteriors, so siding, windows, gutters, doors, both residentially and commercially. But yeah, that's a little bit about kind of like where the name came from.
Tell me a little bit about, because everybody out there, has that deferred maintenance. I bet we see it a lot when it comes to gutters and siding and roofs as well. What do we need to do so that we don't spring that leak, or so that our gutter isn't just pouring? I see it just walking down my street. The guy who, instead of it going down the spout, he's got some sort of a break or something in the middle, and it's just pouring down the side of his house.
Yeah, so regular maintenance is very important for the exterior. We talked about the torrential rain and just the weather that we get. Whether you're in New England or anywhere, the weather changes, and it does a number on your home. So checking it annually or biannually is very important. Cleaning your gutters, making sure that they're flowing properly is something you always want to make sure of, because it can be problematic, especially in the winter, right? Your gutters freeze up and it starts to back up on your roof. You don't have the proper underlayment, and you could start to see leaking on the inside.
Yeah. When you get a call and you're located in Fitchburg, what's sort of your radius that you have?
Yeah, so predominantly for residential, we focus on Worcester County and Middlesex County, but we do service other areas for residential. However, with commercial, we go all throughout New England. So we're servicing anywhere from Maine, Vermont, New Hampshire, Connecticut, Rhode Island. I do have another office in Waterford, Connecticut. So residentially, we service Hartford over to Providence, Rhode Island, kind of everything in between. And then I have a third office in Sarasota, Florida. So we'll service southern Tampa over to Lakeland, down to northern Fort Myers, and kind of everything in the middle there, predominantly focusing on Sarasota, Manatee, and Charlotte County. So we've got the three offices. So we've got quite the spread.
Yeah, you guys are pretty busy too, for sure. Patrick, is there much difference between the calls you get for commercial and residential? Are people concerned about different things?
That's a great question. Yeah, so I think they are. Consumers are looking typically to they're a little bit more looking to typically replace their roof, where commercial clients sometimes are trying to maintain their investment longevity. A lot of the times on the residential side, they're calling when the roof is kind of at the end of its life. Whereas commercial, they're trying to maintain their investment. They're trying to budget. Residential is a little bit more, it's a very personal place for somebody, their home, right? And when you're dealing with commercial, you're typically dealing with a maintenance person. They don't live there. So there's a lot of different needs, different questions, different wants. And it's why we focus, we have a team for residential, and then we have a team for commercial, which is unique, right? Roofing companies typically stick to commercial or residential, or if they're doing residential and they do a little bit of commercial, it's kind of the same people, but the sales cycle, the buying cycle, production, everything is a lot different on the commercial side. So we tend to treat it very differently.
What do you mostly get a call for from residential? I mean, what are most people looking for?
So that's a good question. So it depends on the situation, right? Obviously the calls kind of have an uptick when you have these torrential rains because, the roofs are leaking. Sometimes you'll have people, looking more for just like cosmetic. They're like, hey, it's getting old. I want to be proactive. So it can be very different from the consumer side. It could be, hey, they're calling in because it's pouring rain, or hey, I'm starting to notice a little drip, or hey, I'm trying to get ahead of it, right? So you can kind of have all three. But I think, there's definitely different reasons why people will call in. I would personally say it's always better to be proactive because when you're reactive, then you have to start, doing repairs on the inside of your home and not just the exterior.
Patrick, actually, so you brought up a really good point about your consumer side of your business. And I kind of want to talk a little bit about your accreditation and why you chose to become accredited. How do you build relationships with these people? Part of what the BBB does, we have our accredited businesses, but then we also have a lot of consumer resources. And I know through the years, there have been a lot of like home scams of people trying to rip off like roofing and things. So as like a reputable accredited business, how are you building those relationships with your customers?
For us, we really focus on the whole process, right? This is typically when customers are calling in, like I talked about earlier, they're dealing with something very stressful, right? Their roof is leaking.
Yep.
So they're kind of in a panic a lot of the time. They don't really know if they're going to be calling a reputable company. So there's like an array of factors that really we have to be mindful of as, contractors. And I think for us, building relationships is really being transparent, making sure that we're talking about things that other companies may not talk about. A big thing in the roofing industry, unfortunately, is they'll give a very low number, but they won't address all of the issues going on.
Right.
And then when the roof is open and somebody feels vulnerable, they're trying to give change orders. So we prefer to be very upfront, and if our price is a little bit more, we just need to educate the consumer. And if they don't think that it's a good fit, we'll always wish them the best. But for us, I would rather have a customer know and understand what the potentials are than to not talk about it and make them talk about it when they feel vulnerable, when their roof is off their home and there's just a lot of stuff going on.
Right.
So, I think that's really how I built the business through word of mouth, is just because I always focused on just a good solution. What would it take to make sure that this roof is going to perform during the harshest weather? So
it's important. It's super important. That's why we have people like you come on and talk about these things. So why did you actually choose to become accredited then?
So wherever we go, we actually get accredited. So we've got the 3 offices, and we make sure that we get accredited with the BBB because, consumers go there to see if companies are legit.
Yep.
We've got leads from it. We've had customers make their final decision based off of, the Better Business Bureau. So for us, it's really just to kind of let consumers know that, hey, we are a legitimate business and we are, working within the community.
No,
yeah,
that's great.
I was just going to say, for something like Red Dog's Roofing, and you have those locations, but you are in an industry in which there will be every once in a while some random guy knocks on my door and says, "Hey, I'm doing the roof across the way there. Now, if you've got cash, gee, I got some extra materials. Do you want me to come over?" And it's like, well, who is this guy? Like, he's just randomly knocking on my door, and I think that's when you call the BBB and you start checking credentials because you want to go with an accredited business, particularly when it comes to something like roofing.
Right. You're not knocking on doors saying you have extra materials, I'm sure.
Exactly. Yeah, it's definitely a different approach. And, unfortunately, roofing has, a lot of stigma, right? A lot of negative stigma. And, some of it is true. There's a lot